Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Yukying Anita Mui. Yukying Anita Mui is a 56-year-old woman who lives in Markham. She is 5 feet 6 inches tall, weighs 120 pounds, has brown eyes, and has shoulder-length black hair. She is a prominent real estate agent in the Richmond Hill and Toronto area. Her real estate listings include luxury homes in Markham and North York commercial units in plazas and shopping centers, and large industrial properties, valued at nearly $17 million. In addition, Moy is also an influential figure in the Canadian business community. Over the years, she has attended many fundraising events and dinners, often appearing alongside Ontario MPs, ministers, and mayors. In 2017, she was named president of the Toronto Paragon Lions Club. On Instagram, Moy shared that she was named one of Century 21's top 10 real estate agents in Canada and is in the top 1% of Century 21 Atria. She is known for being kind and compassionate, as she often makes time to participate in community fundraising activities as the president of the local Lions Club, despite her busy schedule. On Friday, August 9th, Moy's family reported her missing. They said they had not seen her since about 9 a.m., when she left her home in the Baycliffe Road and Warden Road area. One of Moy's 2 sons spoke to her around 11 a.m., but he has since lost contact with her. Police and Moy's family are concerned for her safety. They say this behavior is out of character for her, and the circumstances surrounding her disappearance are being treated as suspicious. They believe that on the day she went missing, she went to a large rural property on Vandorf Side Road to conduct a real estate transaction. So they believe she disappeared from that area. York police conducted a search of the area with dogs, aircraft, and forensics teams, but found no clues. Police later suspected that Moy's disappearance was related to the kidnapping of Ying Zhong, another woman who also went missing in Markham. Ying Zhong's body was found about a week before Moy disappeared. Both women were in their 50s and ran businesses in the area. Police believe Moy and Ying Zhong were likely transported in a white delivery van. But there is currently no evidence to suggest the 2 incidents are linked. During the investigation, police discovered Mua's vehicle, a white 2024 Mercedes-Benz GLA 450 SUV. It was found in the area of Finch Avenue East and Warden Avenue in Toronto on the afternoon of her disappearance. 3 days later, on August 12th, a member of the public called the police after seeing something suspicious. Shortly after, Ontario Provincial Police arrived on the scene and discovered a burned body in the area of Avro Arrow Road and Highway 400 near McDougall Township, an area known for its dense, isolated forests. The body was sent to the Chief Medical Examiner's Office for identification, and on August 21st, 2024, the medical examiner confirmed that it was indeed the body of Yukying Anita Moy. Police are currently investigating why Moy was targeted and are trying to determine the exact time of her death. Additionally, the cause of her death has not yet been confirmed. After Moy's remains were found, the investigation intensified. York Regional Police, working closely with the OPP, began investigating the incident leading up to her death. They discovered that 3 young men had been using Moy's property. These men allegedly took and used her credit cards at various locations in Toronto. After she disappeared, 3 individuals were involved, including 2 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds from Toronto, and a 17-year-old from Whitby. Authorities say they are still investigating whether these teenagers are connected to Moy's death. A 17-year-old from Whitby is facing multiple charges, including 2 counts of possession of property obtained by crime, 2 counts of fraud under $5,000, and several weapons-related charges. The weapons charges include possession of a restricted weapon, possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose, and careless storage of a prohibited weapon. Another 17-year-old from Toronto is also facing 3 counts of fraud under $5,000. Additionally, a 16-year-old from Toronto is facing 1 count of fraud and 1 count of breach of conditions. 2 of them have been released on bail, while the other is awaiting a bail. Hearing investigators believe the incident was targeted and are continuing to investigate. They have identified a vehicle involved in Moy's death. Specifically, the vehicle is a 2019 white Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van, which is believed to have transported her from a home on Vandorf Side Road in Stophill to Avro Arrow Road. It is currently unclear whether Moy was alive when she was transported in the vehicle. Police soon identified a 4th suspect in Moy's disappearance, Ji Cheong Marco Hu, 47. He was Moy's longtime business partner in real estate. They had recently had a serious financial dispute, Immigration records show that Hu left Canada for Hong Kong on August 10th, 2024, shortly after Moy went missing. Police are still searching for him. On August 27th, 2024, York Regional Police issued a Canada-wide arrest warrant for Zi Chung. Marco Hu, who is now the prime suspect in the case. Investigators later seized 2 vehicles linked to Hu. One was a 2019 white Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van with Ontario license plate CW HW720, and the other was a 2021 gray Porsche Cayenne SUV with Ontario license plate CTZT on 72. They suspect this Porsche may have had different license plates, CTZD177 or ACD989, in the days leading up to August 9th. Finally, York Regional Police arrested 2 new suspects in connection with Moy's death. They are Abid Kujiane, 24, of Oshawa, and Oscar Liang, 19, of Toronto. Liang, who was arrested on December 4th, faces charges of manslaughter, aiding and abetting murder, forcible confinement, and kidnapping. Meanwhile, Kujiani, who was arrested on November 27, has been charged with insulting the dignity of another person, conspiracy to commit a crime, and multiple fraud and weapons-related charges. Police found the 2 near the scene where the body was burned. Using phone location data, the case has attracted international attention due to the violent nature of the crime and the international repercussions of the suspect's escape. Canadian authorities are working closely with international law enforcement agencies, including the Hong Kong police, to track down Hu and bring justice to Moy. The issuance of a red notice will assist in global cooperation in apprehending the suspect. Yukiying Anita Mui, a respected real estate broker and community leader, is known for her kindness and enthusiasm for helping others. Her sudden disappearance and the subsequent discovery of her body have left many unanswered questions, especially regarding the motive behind the murder. As the investigation continues, finding the prime suspect, Jixiang Marco Hu, is crucial to ensuring he is held accountable for his actions. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we dive into the case of a young man's mysterious disappearance from his remote farm in Utah. A normal day in the peaceful desert quickly becomes a tragic tale of violence and betrayal. Follow along as we uncover the pivotal moments of this disturbing case, where a shocking confession brings justice to a family desperate for answers. What drove a man to commit such a heinous act? Let's take a closer look at the twists and turns that lead to this heartbreaking case. Dylan Rounds is a 19-year-old farmer from the small town of Lucerne. Known for his hard-working nature and the bright future ahead of him. He moved to Lucerne in 2021, eager to start his own life in the vast desert, where he worked on a small farming operation. Dylan was particularly passionate about his farm, investing much of his time and energy into farming and raising livestock. Family and friends described him as a young man with great potential, with plans to make a meaningful contribution to society. He went missing from his farm over Memorial Day weekend in 2022. At the time, he was preparing the land for his first crop and was living in a camper on the farm, visiting his parents frequently because where he lives, there is no running water. He was last seen talking to his grandmother on May 28th, and after that, no one found him again. His mother, Candace Cooley, immediately suspected foul play and reported him missing a few days later. Candace insisted that Dylan had no issues with drugs, mental health, or self-harm, and she stated that he had not given up on his lifelong dream. One suspicious aspect of the disappearance was that, when investigators initially searched Dylan's farm, they found his shoes in a pile of dirt. According to Dylan's parents, he owned only 1 pair of shoes and replaced them when they wore out. Candace expressed skepticism that a young man would walk in the desert without shoes and suspected foul play in her son's disappearance. Dylan's father, Justin Round, and Candace are actively involved in the search for their son, offering a $20,000 reward for information about his whereabouts. Dylan's disappearance shocked his family and community. Despite an extensive search, his whereabouts remained a mystery for months, leading authorities to classify it as a murder investigation. As the investigation into Dylan's disappearance began, authorities quickly turned to the young man's shoes near his farm. What particularly caught their attention was a shoe with blood on it. DNA testing later confirmed that the blood belonged to Dylan. Even more surprising was the discovery of DNA from James Brenner, 59, a trusted friend of Dylan's family, also found on the shoes. Additionally, data showed that the last signal from Dylan's phone was sent from an area near Lucerne Pond. Police thoroughly searched the area and eventually discovered Dylan's phone at the bottom of the pond. This opens up a promising new line of investigation. When forensic experts downloaded the data from the phone, they discovered a video taken at the exact time Dylan disappeared. In the video, James Brenner, an acquaintance of Dylan's family, to be cleaning a gun with visible blood stains on his arm and shirt. The shirt was later seized, and authorities confirmed that Dylan's DNA was on it, further strengthening the evidence against Brenner. Candace said the family was told that Brenner was angry because Dylan had left his truck in the shed on the day he went missing. Brenner was initially arrested in July 2nd, 022 on weapons charges. Meanwhile, police gathered additional evidence, including key data from Dylan's phone and DNA analysis. In March 2nd, 023, Brenner was formally charged in Utah's 1st District Court with aggravated murder, a first-degree felony, and abuse or destruction of a corpse, a third-degree felony. The charges were filed by the Box Elder County District Attorney's Office in Brigham City, Utah. Charging documents state that Round's body was not found because Brenner allegedly moved and concealed it while waiting for justice. Dylan's family has worked tirelessly to find answers and founded a non-profit organization to support families of missing loved ones. This is their way of honoring Dylan, channeling their grief into strength to help others going through the same painful journey. In April 2nd, 024, Brenner entered into a plea agreement that required him to provide authorities with the location of Dylan's remains in exchange for a reduced charge. A few days later, Brenner led investigators to the area in Lucin, Utah, where Dylan's body was discovered, ending a nearly 2-year search. In exchange, Brenner's charges were reduced from first-degree murder to second-degree murder, and a charge of handling human remains was dismissed. Brenner also pleaded guilty to an additional charge of possessing a firearm while being a restricted person. Another case, unrelated to Dylan's disappearance, was also dismissed as part of the deal. On May 15, 2024, James Brenner formally pleaded guilty to murder in the Dylan Rounds case, marking a significant step toward bringing closure to this heartbreaking case. Brenner's guilty plea was the result of a legal settlement between him, Dylan's family, and the state of Utah. Brenner was sentenced on July 1st, 2024, and will face mandatory consecutive prison terms for each count. Both the prosecution and defense agreed to sentences, ranging from a minimum of 3 years to a maximum of 30 years in prison. While Dylan's mother coolly expressed relief that Brenner will face consequences, she acknowledged that the plea agreement resulted in a lighter sentence than she had expected given the way the legal system operates. Brenner was sentenced on July 1st, 2024, where he will face mandatory consecutive sentences for each count. Brandon County District Judge Maynard sentenced Brenner to serve a concurrent sentence of 1 to 15 years in prison for second-degree murder and 2 consecutive sentences of 2 to 15 years in prison for unlawful possession of a weapon by a restricted person. This will result in a minimum sentence of 3 years in prison and a maximum of 30 years. Maynard stated that he would recommend to the parole board that they should keep Brenner for as long as possible under the law. Before sentencing, Judge Maynard made a statement indicating that he would have preferred to impose a more severe sentence than what the plea bargain had agreed upon. He expressed dissatisfaction with the agreed-upon sentence, saying this is not a fitting end for a man like Brenner. Judge Maynard went on to say that he understood the agreement had been reached with the consent of Dylan's family, but he felt limited in what he could do and had no choice but to abide by the agreement that had been made, while Dylan's mother expressed relief that Brenner would face consequences. She acknowledged that the plea agreement resulted in a lighter sentence than she had hoped for. Dylan Rounds, a promising young man, was the victim of an unacceptable crime. His death was a devastating loss for his family and loved ones. This case not only reflects the potential dangers in society, but also demonstrates the commitment of the authorities. They have worked tirelessly to investigate and track down the perpetrators in order to bring them to justice and ensure that this incident does not fall into oblivion. It is a testament to the role of the law in maintaining order and fairness in society, and a reminder that all crimes, no matter how hidden, will eventually come to light. Bring justice to the victims and their families. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Kelly Cochran. Christopher Reagan was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, where he spent his early years. At the age of 20, he decided to serve his country and join the military. Christopher committed himself to protecting the peace and safety of his fellow citizens. Christopher was stationed at a military base near Marquette, where he met Terry O'Donnell, a young teacher from Iron River. They lived in the same area and would often see each other around town as they spent more time together. They remained close friends for many years, but Christopher eventually decided to leave the military and move to Traverse City. Despite the distance between them, they continued to communicate regularly, and in December 2nd, 012, Christopher asked Terry to take their relationship to the next level. Terry and Christopher have known each other for many years. They find they have a lot in common. They decide to live together. Terry and Christopher choose Iron River as the perfect place for them to settle down. Christopher finds a job at a factory that makes parts for military ships, where he becomes a supervisor. However, after 2 years of living together, problems began to arise in their relationship. Unfortunately, they didn't make an effort to work through their issues, and it became clear that their relationship was coming to an end. Eventually, they made the difficult decision to go their separate ways. Despite the breakup, they were able to part on good terms and remain friends. After breaking up with Terry, Christopher realized that he couldn't live in her house anymore, so he decided to rent his own house. He felt that the town he lived in was too small, and he wanted a more dynamic city. Christopher began applying for jobs in various locations, sending out his resume in search of a new job. In October 2nd, 014, Christopher found a job in Asheville, North Carolina. As Christopher settled into his new life in Asheville, he contacted Terry on October 14th, telling her that he would be taking the day off tomorrow and looking forward to meeting Terry for a walk. However, on October 15th, Christopher did not contact Terry as planned. Terry became worried and tried calling him for several days, but he did not answer. She even contacted their mutual friends. 10 days after Christopher went missing, Terry filed a police report. The police accepted the report and told Terry that Christopher had probably moved to a new job in North Carolina and that he had started a new life and wanted to contact old friends. To avoid speculation, investigators conducted a thorough investigation. They identified Christopher's new workplace and contacted an employee to gather information. However, surprisingly, they found out that Christopher had not shown up to work in 10 days. The police then suspected that he might have been involved in an accident, given his frequent solo outdoor trips. The search for Christopher led investigators to the local woods, where he was known to frequent. Trained search dogs were brought into aid in the effort, but no signs of Christopher were found. Terry, concerned that Christopher may have been injured or in an accident, suggested searching his former apartment. The investigators agreed and visited the apartment, where they were met with a scene of disarray. Clothes and belongings were scattered across the floor, and closets were left open. Initially, they thought that Christopher might have simply been messy, but Terry disputed this, stating that Christopher was typically neat and organized. The detectives started to suspect a connection between the recent events and the crime. After investigating Christopher's home, they decided to expand their search. A thorough search of the neighborhood led them to find Christopher's car 8 miles outside Iron River, near the city limit. The police found it unusual that the car was left there, suggesting it might have been abandoned unintentionally. After forcing open a door, they searched the interior and found nothing suspicious, only ordinary clothing. However, one of the officers noticed a small, yellow piece of paper on the front passenger seat, with the detailed route written on it. They decided to follow the route to see where it led, although the paper did not specify an exact address. The directions were clear. According to Terry, Christopher, although familiar with the city of Iron River, did not know the local street names, so he wrote down the directions using landmarks, such as bus stops and gas stations. Terry deduced from the detailed notes that this was Christopher's first time visiting the location. The detectives followed the route outlined on the paper, which led them to a nearby town and a specific house mentioned in Christopher's notes. When they arrived, they knocked on the door to gather information in Christopher's connection to the location. A man named Jason Cochran answered the door, and his wife, Kelly, was there. The police explained that they were investigating Christopher's disappearance and had found a lead pointing to this address. Terry, who worked with Christopher at the same factory, revealed that they were co-workers. She had tried to contact Christopher via text message in mid-October, but had not received a response. Investigators found a note in Christopher's car that showed the route to Jason's house. Although confused, Jason and Kelly agreed to cooperate with the investigation. After a short interrogation without any further clues, the detectives left Jason Cochran's house. Detectives then interviewed Christopher's co-workers at the factory. A supervisor shared that Christopher had been having an affair with Kelly Cochran, which was an open secret among employees. This revelation sparked interest, leading investigators to question the Jason and Kelly during re-interrogation. Kelly confessed to her relationship with Christopher. However, she claimed that she could not reveal this information earlier because her husband Jason was present. According to Kelly, Jason agreed to her affair. However, Christopher's colleagues disputed Kelly's story. They claimed that Jason did not approve of Kelly's affair. When Jason was later brought in for questioning, he completely denied approving of Kelly's affair. His strong objection to Kelly's infidelity aroused suspicion and made him a suspect. The investigation into Christopher's disappearance was ongoing, but the lack of concrete evidence made it impossible to determine whether Kelly was involved. As a result, Kelly and Jason were released from the police station. The case remained unsolved for 5 months. In March 2nd, 015, a new investigator, Detective Jeremy Ogden from the Hobart Police Department, took over the case. Jeremy Ogden began by thoroughly examining the Jason Cochran family's background. Kelly and Jason had met in high school and started living together soon after graduation. They had distinct personality. Kelly was outgoing, sociable, and talkative, while Jason was quiet and reserved. He rarely initiated conversations, only responding to questions asked of him. Despite their differences, they decided to get married. After the wedding, they started a business together, providing swimming pool maintenance services. The business was modest, but it provided a decent income for they. Jason handled most of the pool maintenance work, but the constant stress and physical strain took a toll on his health. He began to experience back problems and felt increasingly heavier every day. Eventually, he realized he could no longer continue running the business. Kelly then took over the responsibilities of running the business, hoping that Jason would soon recover and return to his duties. However, his condition continued to worsen, and medical treatments were not providing the desired relief. Kelly searched for alternative ways to help her husband recover. During her search, Kelly discovered a plant that offered hope for Jason's recovery. However, the plant was banned in their home state, making it inaccessible to them to access the treatment. Kelly and Jason decided to relocate to Michigan, specifically Iron River Township, in 2014. Jason consulted his doctor and received a prescription for pain medication. Around the same time, in early 2014, Jason's wife, Kelly Cochran, started working at a factory that manufactured parts for U.S. warships. Kelly and Jason moved to the area. Kelly and Jason worked at the same factory where Christopher Reagan worked. Christopher and Kelly found common topics of conversation and over time became close friends. This friendship was especially important to Christopher. After gathering evidence, prosecutors presented their case to a Michigan judge to obtain a search warrant for Kelly and Jason's home. The judge granted the warrant, and on March 6th, a team of investigators searched Kelly and Jason's home, carefully searching for any evidence related to Christopher's disappearance. The only significant discovery was a book written by Jason. He used a pseudonym in the world of video games. The title of the work was Ordinary, but its content was horrifying. In this dark and violent book, Jason described the murder of the person who had harmed him. After reading the book, the detectives noticed a character who bore an uncanny resemblance to Christopher. This raised suspicions about Jason, leading them to wonder if he had been inspired by the real-life crimes he had committed. 3 weeks later, a second search of Jason's home was conducted. The police hoped to find crucial evidence that had been missed in the first search. However, when they arrived at the Jason's home, they found it empty with no cars in sight. Repeated attempts to knock on the door went unanswered. It was later discovered that Kelly and Jason had fled the state shortly after the initial search, moving to Indiana. Their sudden departure left investigators concerned. Michigan police, needing a DNA sample, asked Indiana police for help. Indiana police went to Jason's new home where they had just moved. The investigation into Christopher Reagan's disappearance ran out of clues. Time passed, and on February 22nd, 2016, Hobart, Indiana police received a frantic call from Kelly Cochran, who tried to explain that her husband Jason was not breathing. When paramedics arrived, Kelly was in a panic. It was clear that Jason was beyond saving. He was sitting in a chair, his face burning like fire as if he had overheated. The doctors officially confirmed Jason's death. His body was then sent for a thorough forensic examination. Meanwhile, Kelly was handed over to a police patrol and taken to relatives who lived nearby. To piece together what happened, investigators thoroughly searched the Jason's new home. During the search, a police officer found a syringe at the foot of Jason in his wife's bed. Initially, investigators believed Jason's death was due to substance abuse. The medical examiner's report showed that Jason had multiple drugs in his system. But Jason's death was due to strangulation, confirmed by bruises on his neck and face. The focus of the investigation then shifted to Kelly Cochran, who appeared to be connected to both crimes. She was now considered the prime suspect in not only Christopher's disappearance, but also her husband's murder. On February 23, 2016, Kelly Cochran was summoned to the police station to answer questions about her husband's death. Under direct questioning and pressure from investigators, Kelly denied any involvement in her husband's death and Christopher's disappearance. She claimed that Jason's death was due to a drug overdose. Months later, investigators still lacked concrete evidence to convict Kelly. During the investigation, Detective Jeremy Ogden met Walter Hammerman, a close friend of Jason's. Kelly informed Walter of Jason's death, who then contacted the police. Walter shared his insights with investigators, saying he did not believe Jason's death was caused by drugs. He claimed that Jason had used herbs to relieve his chronic back pain. In March of the previous year, Jason confided in Walter about his concern. Jason and Kelly were asked to go to Indiana because the Iron River police suspected them of being involved in Christopher's disappearance. This had a significant impact on Jason. Leading to depression, Walter observed the notable change in Jason's behavior, with Kelly increasingly taking control over his life. Jason appeared to be constantly anxious, and he began to avoid social gatherings. As soon as Kelly returned from work, as the investigation progressed, this information became a vital link. After the medical examiner determined that Jason had died from strangulation, Detective Ogden devised a plan to pressure Kelly into revealing the truth about Jason's death. Walter, Jason's friend, was used as bait to lure Kelly into a trap. On March 12, 2016, Walter, under police surveillance and equipped with a listening device, called Kelly. He told her that Jason had given him a letter containing important information before his death, with the condition that it be sent to the police if anything happened to him. However, Kelly surprisingly asked Walter to drop the idea, which caught both Walter and the police off guard. Despite this development, the detectives still lacked direct evidence to build a case. In the weeks following her initial questioning, Kelly was subjected to multiple interrogations by investigators, trying to uncover the truth. Despite their efforts, she continued to deny any wrongdoing. However, on April 26, 2016, it became apparent that Kelly Cochran had evaded the scrutiny of investigators and was on the loose. Detectives joined forces with police officers from Iron River and Hobart to launch a federal manhunt for Kelly Cochran. Walter Hammerman, who had cooperated with the police, was shocked and frightened by the news. He feared that Kelly might never be caught and could potentially harm him again. As the search for Kelly intensified, her phone went off, leading investigators to believe she was deliberately concealing her location. Kelly evaded police and fled to Wingo, Kentucky, over 6 hours away from Hobart. A detective notified the local authorities to exercise extreme caution if they found Kelly. Police in Wingo identified Kelly at her cousin's house on April 28th, understanding that she posed a potential danger and was prone to attempting to escape. Officers rapidly proceeded to the residence, avoiding advance warnings that afternoon and detaining Kelly on site. During the interview, Kelly revealed new details. That Kelly was deeply in love with Jason and wanted to leave the city life behind to start over with him. On October the 13th, 2015, Jason discovered Kelly's infidelity. Jason made a dark pact. The adulterer was obliged to kill his lover if the affair was exposed. Kelly claimed she had never taken this pact seriously, thinking it was just a joke. However, Jason was resolute and warned Kelly that if she didn't fulfill her end of the bargain, he would take matters into his own hands. Despite her reservations, Kelly reluctantly helped Jason commit a heinous crime. The next evening, October 14, 2015, Christopher arrived at Kelly's house, eager to spend a romantic evening with Christopher. While her husband was away, Kelly had planned a fun evening, complete with dinner and intimacy. Kelly and Christopher had dinner together and then went upstairs to the house. Then Jason suddenly appeared. Jason rushed into the bedroom holding a rifle. Christopher immediately realized that he was in danger. Without hesitation, Jason shot Christopher in the head, killing him. Jason and Kelly then dragged the body down to the basement, where they began to dismember it. With a hacksaw, Jason and Kelly cut Christopher's limbs and head off his body and placed the remains in several garbage bags. They then dumped the bags in the woods near Crystal Falls. To avoid suspicion, they drove Christopher's car away from the house. Kelly and Jason thoroughly cleaned the house to remove any evidence of the crime. Kelly was consumed by a deep-seated anger towards her husband, whom she blamed for ruining her chance at happiness with Hay. She truly loved Christopher. She couldn't forgive her husband for depriving her of the opportunity to be with him, and the pain and loss she felt lingered every day. Kelly's resentment towards her husband eventually turned to hatred, and she knew she could no longer live peacefully with him. An opportunity for revenge presented itself on February 22nd, 2016, when her husband complained of back pain. Kelly convinced him to let her give her an injection, but she deliberately gave him a dose that killed him. However, the medication didn't work as planned, and her husband was still breathing. Kelly then suffocated him by covering his mouth and nose with her hands. To ensure he was dead, she also squeezed his neck, which explained the bruises found on his body. After confessing to the crime, Kelly cooperated with the police to help them locate Christopher's remains. On May 18, 2016, Detective Jeremy Ogden LED'd a team to a remote area near Crystal Falls to search for Christopher's body. A canine unit picked up the scent and LED'd the team to a small hill where they found a human skull with bullet holes indicating a homicide. The team believed they had discovered Christopher's remains. Further examination of the scene yielded additional evidence, including a .22 caliber bullet. A broken firearm. Dental records later confirmed the victim's identity. This breakthrough finally solved the case that had haunted investigators for 2 years. Kelly Cochran was formally charged with the murders of Christopher and Jason Cochran in April 2, 2016. On February 13, 2017, Kelly was brought to court in Michigan to face charges. The prosecutor argued that Kelly was the mastermind behind the crime and that she had planned and executed. The prosecution presented strong evidence, including Kelly's own confession, to support their case. However, Kelly told a different story. She claimed that her husband, Jason, was the one who had planned and committed the crime. According to Kelly, Jason was jealous and had been abusing her. On the day of the crime, Jason allegedly hid in the basement and surprised Kelly and Christopher, then shot Christopher in a fit of rage. Kelly also claimed that Jason had forced her to help him dismember the body by threatening to harm her. Despite Kelly's new version of events, the jury found her guilty of premeditated murder. After deliberating for 3 hours, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. After being sentenced, Kelly Cochran was sent directly to Crown Point Correctional Facility in Ionia, Michigan, where she is currently serving her sentence. Hey, detective, welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Alison Bonilla. Alison Pamela Bonilla Vasquez was born on November 7, 2001 in Cartago, Costa Rica. She is an only child living with her mother, Yendra Vasquez. In addition to her mother, her grandparents, Ramon and Marjorie, and her aunt Samara also helped raise Alison. Alison's father left the family shortly after her birth. He chose to be with another woman who was pregnant. He did not want to play a role in Alison's life. Only once, when he was diagnosed with lung cancer, did he ask to see his daughter? And Yendrai allowed him to. It is worth noting that his second family did not know about Alison's existence. Alison and her mother, Yendre, had a particularly close relationship. For Alison, Yendre was not only a mother, but also a father. Therefore, Alison often gave her mother gifts on Father's Day. Their relationship went beyond the typical mother-daughter relationship. Alison felt comfortable sharing everything with Yendrai, without fear of being misunderstood or judged. Despite not having a father, Alison did not feel lonely or abandoned. She had a large family and enjoyed spending time with them. She also attended church regularly every Sunday. Relatives described Alison as a kind, outgoing and friendly girl. In photos, she always looked happy, and there was no sign of sadness or longing in her eyes. Alison had always dreamed of becoming a model. She decided to drop out of 8th grade to focus on makeup classes, thinking that combining the two was too difficult. She did not want to waste time on something that would not help her achieve her goals. After that, Alison started looking for a job to help her mother pay the bills, but did not receive any responses from the places she applied. This made her very sad. Her mother, Yendrai, realized that her daughter would have difficulty finding a job due to her limited education, so she encouraged Alison to take evening classes. At age 18, Alison enrolled in Liceo Enrique Gayer a few miles from home. During this time, she completed a pastry course and began practicing. Alison made delicious cakes and desserts that were loved by everyone in the neighborhood. This helped her find a way to make money from her baking talent. Alison had a boyfriend named Harold Sura Solano, who lived in Cachi, a district in the province of Cartago, Costa Rica. Usually, Alison stayed home with her mother in the morning, then met Harold and then went to evening school at 6 o'clock. She often returned home late by bus. The route from the bus stop to her house was dangerous, dark and deserted. Therefore, Alison always informed her mother of her location. And sometimes her mother picked her up at the bus stop or halfway. On March 4th, 2020, Alison went to her mother's nail salon, then visited her classmate pal for about 15 minutes. They arrived at school at 6 p.m. and separated because they had different classes. Alison arrived at school and waited in an empty classroom for about 15 minutes before realizing that her classes had been canceled for the day. Instead of going home right away, she decided to visit her aunt who lived near the school. However, her aunt was not home. Alison then decided to go to her boyfriend Harold's house. When she arrived, she learned that Harold was at work but would be back soon. Harold's mother invited Alison inside to wait when Harold returned. The family had dinner together, talking about a variety of topics and discussing future plans. After dinner, Harold excused himself for a moment, saying that he had urgent business to attend to but would be back soon. At 8:15 p.m., Allison left Harold's house without waiting for him to return. This set off a chain of events that would become nationally known. Harold returned home about 5 minutes later, and seeing that Allison had left, texted her to ask where she was, and offered to give her a ride home on his bike. Allison replied immediately that she had already arrived at the bus stop. While waiting for the bus, she texted her friend to ask if PA's cousin could give her a ride home on his bike. However, PA's cousin refused, because his bike was a special type and not suitable for two people. It is unclear why Allison did not ask her boyfriend for help. She may have been angry with him or did not want to bother him. Allison got off the bus at 8:43 p.m. Her house was about a mile away. Feeling anxious and scared, she texted her mother to pick her up. At 8:45 p.m., Allison texted her boyfriend and mother that two suspicious men had gotten out of a car and were following her. She decided to run home to avoid them. The road Allison was on was dangerous, poorly lit, and had few people. There was only one security camera there, which captured a blurry image that could have been Allison. Allison's mother, Yendrai, went to the bridge, half a mile from their home, to pick up her daughter, but did not see her. She tried to stay calm, thinking that Allison might have gone back to the bus stop for safety. However, she did not find her there either. She finally thought that Allison had not seen her and had gone home on her own. When Yendrai returned home, she found that Allison was not there. She immediately called relatives and friends to ask for help in the search. About 30 minutes later, Harold woke up and received a call from his aunt, Samara, saying Allison was missing. He tried to contact Yendrai but was unsuccessful. 3 hours later, Yendrai reported Allison missing to the police, and the search began. Luckily, Yendrai had the last photo of Allison in the clothes she was wearing. Police checked several locations, from the bus stop to Allison's house, Catchy Lake, and the nearby hydroelectric dam. On March 5, 2020, police found their first clue: Allison's glasses in the grass about a mile from her house. However, Allison seemed to have disappeared without a trace. 8 days later, they discovered Allison's identification on a coffee plantation. This was surprising, because they had checked the area several times before. What was even more suspicious was that her ID was placed in such a conspicuous and clean location, as if someone had intentionally placed it there to mislead the investigation or hide something. 15 days after Allison went missing, Yendrai received a call from Allison's father. Instead of showing concern or offering help, he said that Allison was missing because she was too beautiful. Shocked by these insensitive words, Yendrai immediately hung up the phone, unable to believe what she had just heard. For a long time, the family, police, and volunteers continued to search for Allison. Every Sunday, they hung up posters with her picture. One day, they decided to paint messages on the streets, recreating Allison's journey from the intersection to the bridge, where she was believed to have disappeared. They also put up posters on roadside poles to attract the attention of passers-by. At the same time, the police received an important clue. A man came to the police station and said that he knew Allison and had seen her on the night she disappeared. According to the man, at around 8:30 p.m. on March 4th, he left his home on his motorbike to pick someone up. On the way, he saw Allison in a burgundy two-door BMW parked next to her. He turned around to check on the situation and realized it was his cousin's BMW. He was 100% sure of this because the car had distinctive bright yellow headlights. Another witness also confirms to the police that he had seen the same BMW near where Allison went missing that evening. The car belonged to Nelson Sanchez Urania, 28, nicknamed Sukia. Locals called him that because they believed he was a member of a gang in the area. In fact, Nelson and Allison knew each other. Their families had been acquainted for a long time and had lived in the same neighborhood for a while. However, according to Allison's mother, they had only interacted with Nelson a few times. It was just a normal neighborly relationship, not a close friendship. One day, Nelson offered to give Allison and her cousins a ride home. She agreed because it was morning. She was not alone, and she thought Nelson was a good person. On March 2nd, 2022, days before Allison went missing, Nelson contacted her via Facebook. He sent a message asking Allison to answer some questions. On her cousin's advice, Allison agreed to answer them. Next, Nelson asked Allison about her feelings for him. Specifically, he wanted to know if Allison liked him. Allison was confused by Nelson's sudden question, as they were not close and barely knew each other. When Allison asked why, Nelson explained that he did not have a negative opinion of her. but wanted to know if she thought badly of him. Allison reassured Nelson that she did not hate him and that everything was normal between them. Nelson thanked her and said goodbye. Police searched Nelson's home and seized his car. Cell phone and computer? Investigators found shocking images of women being abused on his phone. When they inspected the car, they found that it had been thoroughly cleaned with car polish. However, the front driver's seat carpet and trunk carpet had been removed. Police found hair and blood on the trunk lid and sent samples to a lab for analysis. After examining the exterior of the car, police used a police dog to search for traces. The dog detected possible blood on the two front seats and in the trunk. To confirm, the police used a luminol test, a chemical that reacts with hemoglobin in the blood. The results showed that there were many bloodstains on the car's interior. Despite the owner's efforts to remove them with cleaning products, while waiting for the results from the lab, Nelson remained free but was closely monitored by the police. They monitored his every move to prevent him from leaving the city or the country. Although Yendrai repeatedly requested his arrest, the police did not have enough evidence to do so. Therefore, Nelson continued to live freely, without being prosecuted for many months. Yendrai believed that Allison had been kidnapped for ransom. She tried to stay calm and hoped that her daughter was still alive. In preparation for Allison's return, Yendrai kept her daughter's room as it was not cleaning or rearranging the furniture. She even bought Allison a gift. Yendrai told the press, "I will continue to do so, as long as there is no evidence that she is dead. I still believe that my daughter is alive and will return home." Laboratory test results confirmed that the hair and blood found in Nelson's car belonged to Allison. The police immediately arrested Nelson. Later, his ex-girlfriend told the police that Nelson had never physically abused her, but had put a lot of mental pressure on their relationship. Specifically, he forbade her from contacting her friends and using the internet. According to her, Nelson only wanted to have a sexual relationship with her. His previous boss revealed that he was very irresponsible at work and even stole about $11,000. Additionally, his landlord said an ex-girlfriend had broken up with him because she was tired of paying his debts. She described him as a very spoiled man. After that, Nelson confessed to his crimes against Allison. He said that on the night of Allison's disappearance, he found her walking alone on a deserted road, taking advantage of the late hour and their acquaintance. Nelson offered to give Allison a ride. She agreed and got into the car without suspicion. However, instead of taking her home, Nelson drove to a remote coffee plantation and forced Allison out of the car. Nelson violently attacked her, knocking off her glasses and leaving her nearly unconscious. He dragged her to a nearby abandoned house, where he raped and brutally beat her. Nelson then tied her hands with cloth and duct tape to the front seat of his car. Finally, he stuffed her into the trunk of the car and drove to a dumpster in San Carano Cachi. There, the killer pushed Allison off a cliff into a pile of trash below. He justified his heinous actions by saying that he was under the influence of drugs. He also admitted that he had long been obsessed with Allison, and when he saw her that night, he decided it was his chance to carry out his dark intentions. Surprisingly, Nelson later recanted his initial statement, accusing the police of coercing him into confessing. However, the authorities had enough evidence to charge him. Despite his denials, the suspect could face a maximum sentence of 35 years in prison. In the early morning of September 4th, a search party went to the Tinano landfill to look for Allison's body. However, because the area was large and difficult to access, finding Allison's remains was an extremely difficult task. Moreover, it had been 6 months since Allison went missing. Just 25 days after Allison confessed, the police discovered a number of important pieces of evidence. They found human bone fragments, including a spine ribs, part of the pelvis, and a femur. They also found pieces of clothing that Allison was wearing on the day she disappeared, along with a pair of sneakers with studs inside. All of these clues were sent for testing and thorough analysis by the police. Jose Francisco Herrera, the suspect's defense attorney, questioned the authenticity of the evidence because it was found by volunteers, not professional police. He also said that the discovery of the remains coincided with the time his client declared his innocence, which was suspicious. Rodrigo R., the attorney representing Allison's family, on the other hand, criticized the suspect's change of testimony, saying that it undermined the credibility of the official investigation. On October 5th, 2020, experts confirmed that the remains found belonged to Allison. because only a partial body was found. They were unable to determine the exact cause of death. However, examination of the remains revealed multiple fractures that appeared after death, suggesting she may have fallen from a great height. Her clothes were torn and her sneakers had bite marks, suggesting a possible animal attack. This would explain why the remains were found, scattered in different areas of the landfill. Allison's mother, Yendrai, is furious with the police for not listening and acting promptly. She believes that if they had arrested Nelson sooner, he would have confessed, and Allison's body would have been found in better condition. This is an irreparable loss for the family. Despite the terrible pain she is enduring, Yendrai finds some solace in saying, "My daughter is in a better place now, where no one can hurt her anymore." The trial of Nelson took place on July 19th, 2021. Harold, Allison's boyfriend, was a key witness in the case. According to Harold's testimony, on the afternoon of March 4th, 2020, at approximately 6:30 p.m., he returned home and found Allison there with her mother. Harold then left for approximately 5 to 10 minutes. When he returned, he discovered that Allison had left without saying anything. While Allison was on her way home, Harold texted her repeatedly. As soon as she got off the bus, Allison texted Harold to say that 2 men were following her, concerned for her safety. Harold suggested that she take a taxi and promised to pay for it. However, Allison refused twice and said that she would run home. Harold did not receive any further response from Allison after that text message. According to his explanation, he only informed his mother of the situation. He did not contact Allison's mother, Yendrai, because his phone battery died. He then fell asleep for about 30 minutes. It was Allison's aunt who called him to inform him that his girlfriend was missing. Since then, he said he has been worried and tried to call Allison several times, but all the calls went to voicemail. He also could not be reached via WhatsApp messages. Harold said he joined the search party for a few days, but then had to stop because he felt unwell and had to go to work. He really wished things had gone differently. If he could go back in time, he would have taken Allison home that night. However, unfortunately, what happened cannot be changed. On August 18th, 2021, the court sentenced Nelson to 18 years in prison for taking the life of Allison. He could have received twice the sentence, but the judge pointed out that there was no evidence to confirm that Nelson knew the route and time Allison would return home, and that he planned to attack her. Furthermore, due to the condition of Allison's remains, there was no evidence that Nelson forced her to have sex. The story does not end there. Allison's family was not satisfied with the original sentence, arguing that it was not commensurate with the crime. In 2022, they successfully appealed and the court decided to retry the case. As a result, on September 28, 2023, Nelson was sentenced to 35 years in prison. Allison's family's lawyer emphasized that Nelson acted in a cruel and inhumane manner and took advantage of the trust of the victim and her relatives. The court ruled that Nelson's actions were intentional. Nelson used his long-standing relationship with Allison to commit the crime. The criminal court also took into account Nelson's lack of remorse for his actions, although still hurt and angry. The victim's family was relieved by the new verdict. The decision ended a painful chapter in their lives that lasted more than 3 years and put an end to this nightmare. Allison's family created a memorial at the spot where her body was found. They placed a cross flowers and a small altar with a photo of Allison and a statue of the Virgin Mary. Allison's case has caused a stir in Costa Rican media and social media. It has also led to many marches in memory of Allison and other women who have been victims of similar violence. Hello again.